You're listening to the Forefront Radio. As promised, we were going to go over Dum Diversas of 1452. In 1452, Pope Nicholas V, this is the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, issued a papal bull, which was a law entitled Dum Diversas, which authorized Afonso V of Portugal to conquer all Saracens, Muslims, and pagans, aka black people, in a disputed territory in Africa and consign them to perpetual servitude. Now watch this. So now, who was it that they consigned to perpetual servitude? Let's read this quote right here. It says, Yehudi, a place of great trade. This place is reported to be inhabited by one of the lost tribes of Israel, possibly an emigration from the tribe of Judah. Yehuda in African Arabic signifies Judah. Yehudi signifies Jew. It is not impossible that many of the lost tribes of Israel may be found dispersed or scattered in the interior regions of Africa. When we shall become better acquainted with the continent, it is certain that some of the nations that possess the country eastward of Palestine, when the Israelites were a favored nation, have emigrated to Africa. This is showing you before the disbursement of the transatlantic slave trade, many of the Israelites lived in the continent of Africa. So now let's talk about the East African slave trade. A lot of times we have discussions about the transatlantic slave trade, but let's talk about the East African slave trade. So it says slave trade was introduced in Malawi by the Swahili Arab traders in the 19th century, following a great demand for ivory and slaves in the East African markets, namely Zanzibar, Kilwa, Mombasa, and Kilimani. The Swahili Arabs moved further into the interior of Africa, including Malawi, to obtain slaves and ivory. The legacy of slavery. The horrors of slavery in Africa. At the height of slavery in the mid-19th century, the Swahili Arabs, together with other tribes, are believed to have either unalived or sold into slavery 80 to 100,000 Africans per year. Those taken from Malawi and Zambia would be brought to one of the Arab trading centers such as Karongo or Salima, where they were sold to wholesalers. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto you, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen, slave men, and bondwomen, slave women, and no man shall buy you, no man shall redeem or save you. Legacy of slavery continued. They were then crammed into dhows, traditional wooden sail boats or ships. You still see them today, and taken across Lake Malawi. Once on the eastern bank, they were marched across Mozambique to east coast of Africa, usually chained or tied to poles made of wood to prevent escape. Many others were forced to carry elephant tusk, as ivory was a commodity. Any slave too ill or weak to make the journey were abandoned and died of dehydration or were eaten by wild animals. At the coast, the slaves were once more loaded back into dhows or ships for the journey north to Zanzibar Island, Tanzania. They were packed tightly, lying on top of one another in several layers in the hold of the boat. So now I'm going to show you an image of that you can see soon in the next part of this video. In the book entitled History of the Slave Trade, as you can see here, the origins of the slave trade and its impact through history, we touch briefly on what occurred with the Portuguese and Dutch So let's read this quote right here. It says, the Portuguese initiate the slave trade, 1526, trade route from Africa to Brazil. So remember, it was in the 1400s that the Catholic Church authorized the enslavement of all black Jews and black Moors, who they called Saracens or pagans, because they did not want to follow Eurocentric delusionalism to say that the Europeans were the image of Christ, when in reality that was not true. Deuteronomy 28, verse 32, your sons and daughters will be given unto another people. Your sons and daughters shall be given unto another people. Deuteronomy 28, verse 64 says, the Most High will scatter us from all nations, from one end of the earth to another, from one side of the earth to another. Here are some of the slave centers or slave ports. Number 1, Argam. Number 2, Sao Tome off the coast of West Africa. Number 3, Elmina Castle in Ghana. Number 4, the Canary Islands, which was southwest of Spain and across from Morocco. Then you have the Canary Islands, as well as number 5, Hispaniola, which is comprised of Haiti and Dominican Republic. And number 6, San Miguel de Guadalupe. Okay, so these areas were the primary ports that the Spanish, Portuguese, the English, the Dutch, and the French utilized. You will be sold unto your enemies via ship. So the question for the critical thinker is, who did this happen to? Was it so-called Arabs? Was it so-called Ashkenazi Jewish? Or was it the 12 tribes of Israel that were scattered all across the triangle trade? Okay? I'm going over this information for you because many people need pictures to understand the realities of the Bible. You will beget sons and daughters, but Israel, they shall be sold into captivity. This says, the bound captives from the White Lion and Treasurer were forced across the Atlantic against their will. The first president of the United States also was a slaveholder. First president